Growing up in a traditional Asian family, we're all familiar with the idea of tying our identity to social roles. You learn early on what it means to be a good child, a responsible adult, a functional member of society. Those expectations don't always feel heavy, but they do require a kind of constant performance, a way of holding yourself together in public, even when things are quietly falling apart underneath. Kiyoshi Kurosawa asks a really uncomfortable question. What happens when that performance finally breaks? When being correct, normal, and emotionally contained becomes something corrosive instead of stabilizing. In my last video, I talked about how images in Silent Hill 2 construct fear on a psychological level. Today, I want to shift that conversation into cinema and dive into one of the most quietly disturbing psychological horror films ever made, and honestly one of my personal favorites as well, Cure 1997, directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. If you're drawn to Silent Hill, I think this film will stay with you in a very similar way, not because it scares you outright, but because it unsettles something deeper, something that feels uncomfortably familiar. A quick disclaimer. Cure 1997, directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa, is a psychological horror film about a series of brutal murders in Tokyo, where each killer is found disorientated and unable to explain why they commit the crime. Detective Takabe, who is already emotionally exhausted by his wife's illness, begins to trace the murders back to a strange drifter named Mamiya. Mamiya appears harmless. He constantly forgets who he is, where he's going, or why he's there. But through quiet conversations, he somehow unlocks something dark inside ordinary people, pushing them to kill without fully understanding why. What makes Cure terrifying isn't the graphic violence, but suggestion. Kurosawa treats hypnosis not as a flashy mind control device, but as something subtle and contagious, almost like an idea or a mood. The film suggests that violence isn't imposed from outside, but already exists beneath the surface, waiting for the right trigger. By the end, the line between the investigator and the suspect begins to blur. The film never gives clear answers, and that ambiguity is the point. Cure isn't about solving a crime, it's about how fragile the self is and how easily violence can emerge from silence, repetition, and emptiness. Rather than suggesting Kurosawa is quoting specific photographers, it is more accurate to say he operates within a shared photographic lineage. In Kurosawa's world, the camera rarely moves. It frightens the viewers by removing visual emphasis. These images are static, distant, and emotionally restrained, a mirror to a society that observes rather than expresses. Characters are frequently swallowed by wide shots and liminal spaces, as if the frame itself is a way suppressing their emotions. There's no traditional climax or guiding emotional cue in these scenes. There is only space, distance, and accumulation of time. Kurosawa treats the moving image as extended photography. The camera doesn't rush to explain. It holds the frame, allowing dread to thicken within the shots. Much of the horror stems from the stasis, the unsettling realization of how little changes from one shot to the next. Cure utilized the camera as a diagnostic tool. The image appears neutral initially, but as the seconds stretch into minutes, the neutrality becomes oppressive. You begin to feel the weight of time passing in these vacant spaces, and that is where the true discomfort lies. It isn't the violence that disturbs us, it's the way the image refuses to react to it. To understand why the title Cure links hypnosis with violence, we must view hypnosis through the lens of photography. Hypnosis does not force action, it narrows attention. It fixed the mind onto a single suggestion, surgically removing everything else. Photography operates on the same principle of isolation. A photograph captures a moment, frames it, and demands we accept it as reality, even when the context has been stripped away. Mamiya's hypnosis works exactly like Kurosawa's cinematography. It removes context, intention, and psychology, leaving behind a pure, unadorned action. Because the camera rarely tells us how to feel, balance becomes oddly neutral, as if the murder is just another gesture within the frame, no more or less significant than lighting a cigarette. Takabe believes he is curing disorder through logic, but the film's visual structure slowly stripped him of that authority. A pivotal moment occurs when he believes his wife has committed suicide. Kurosawa avoids a conventional dramatic revelation, opting instead for a rapid, fragmented montage. These flashes collapse into one another too quickly to process, blurring the lines between memory, imagination, and reality. By placing these images on the same linear timeline, Kurosawa erases the visual hierarchy. We cannot distinguish what happened from what Takabe fears. This isn't just a stylistic flourish. It mirrors Takabe's internal erosion. His mind is already fractured long before Mamiya's influence takes hold. The montage reveals that his control is merely performative. Once the emotional pressure reaches a breaking point, his perception immediately destabilizes. This destabilization is initially triggered by Mamiya's lighter. Whenever he strikes that flame, the cure begins. In a film dominated by cold neutrality and emotional suppression, fire appears not as an explosion, but as a small, intimate point of light. It is ritualistic. In mythology, fire represents purification and transformation, and here, it is stripped to its most minimal form. The flame doesn't cleanse, it simply reveals. It exposes the hidden geometry of a face or a room for a brief second before plunging it back to the void. Once the wick is struck, the cure is irreversible. The parallel between Detective Takabe and James Sunderland is staggering. Both are men defined by stasis. In an East Asian societal context, the self is not an individual to be expressed, but a role to be performed. As someone who grew up in an Asian family, I think this is also one of the reasons why this work had a profound impact on me, because they address a specific cultural truth. The self is often something to be managed and performed for the sake of others. We see this in their physical presence. They carry themselves within a heavy, muted exhaustion. Their endurance is their primary trait. They are caring for their wives, not just out of love, but out of a crushing social obligation to remain correct, even as their internal worlds rot. This is the suffocation of the intimate space. The home, which should be a sanctuary, becomes a site of silent, polite agony. The horror in both Cure and Silent Hill 2 is the moment that the social mask finally cracks. In Silent Hill 2, James' internal pressure is so immense that it physically manifests. The town becomes a projection of his guilt, resentment, and repressed desire. Pyramid Head isn't just a monster. He is the executioner of James' forced morality. In Cure, Kurosawa keeps the horror internal and invisible. There's no fog, only the stereo industrial architecture of Tokyo. But Mamiya serves the same function as the town of Silent Hill. Mamiya isn't a villain, he is a catalyst. He looks at these quote-unquote correct people and asks the one question they've spent their lives avoiding. Who are you?
あんた誰だ?
By the end of both journeys, the violence they commit is framed as a release. It is the cure for the exhaustion of the performance. When Takabe finally gives in, and when James finally faces the truth of the videotape, they are stripped of their social roles. This isn't a deviation from their character. It is the most honest they have ever been. The violence is the only language left when the silence of suppression becomes too loud to bear. For audiences who understand the way of acting for others, this is more terrifying than any jump scare, because it suggests that the potential for the same rupture exists within anyone who is currently enduring. Takabe and James aren't just characters, they are mirrors. They represent the terrifying cost of saving face and doing one's duty. Their stories suggest that the cure isn't about getting better, it's about finally being allowed to break. This channel is an ongoing research journal, a place to think out loud, test ideas, and sit with images that don't resolve easily. If that resonates with you, feel free to like and subscribe. You're also welcome to stay around and share your own readings or thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.